Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. It'll be just a moment as we get started here. I'm actually spinning up a demo environment that's giving us some problems, which I'm hoping I can resolve because I would really like to be able to demo some of the cloud for healthcare today. So let's see if we can. You can see we're trying a couple different windows here. And actually in the meantime, while we're waiting, let's just acknowledge that you're in the right place. So this is Boston Healthcare Technology User Group. We're meeting for 30 minutes today to talk about intelligent intranet and Microsoft Cloud for healthcare. And you should be able to see our link tree on the right. So if you go to, this is BOSHUG.com. So if you go to BOSHUG.com, again, there's our link tree. And I do want to make an announcement. We are looking for speakers. We have some great speakers scheduled in March and in April, but we do have some open slots for additional speakers. And we're looking for folks who might be interested in speaking. We have a fairly small community on Meetup, but our YouTube and other channels continue to grow. And you can actually see on our YouTube channel, we're getting quite a bit of views for our videos across the different channels. So we stream our content using Restream to several different platforms, if you will, social media platforms, and we're doing well. Some of our videos are up to over 10,000 views now. So if that's something you're interested in, please let us know. Again, we're actively looking for speakers for the group. And so I think what I'll do is, in the interest of time, I'll let this thing continue to try to start up, and maybe we'll get lucky. Again, I was really hoping that I could demo some of the stuff that we were going to talk about, or that to talk about today. But I think what I'll do in the meantime is get started with our PowerPoint slides, and then we'll come back and see if the demo is working. And then, by the way, if it's not, then our plan is to record this demo and then make it available more broadly. So if for some reason we're not able to actually get the demo part of today's discussion working, what we'll do is once it's recorded, the demo piece of it, we'll make sure that it's up in YouTube, and then we'll provide links to our various social channels. Okay, so again, you're in the right spot. This is the bi-weekly meeting of the Boston Healthcare Technology User Group. So a little bit about us. We're still doing the same stuff we've been doing for the last year. So we launched about a year ago. We've had some great growth. Essentially, what our mission is to create a shared environment where this shared interest that we have in healthcare technology can be used to improve patient, provider, member, and researcher experience in healthcare. And so our goal is to do this globally. We consider ourselves a global community at this point, based out of Boston, but we like to think that we're serving a global community. And a big part of this is our community work that we do through various channels as well. As a matter of fact, one of our team members, as we speak, is on a mission now in the Philippines, and delivering various goods and necessities to some people that are in need due to some recent natural disaster type issues that they've had there. And so this is something that's really important to us. And so the idea is to make sure that we're reaching out to the community through not only these global efforts like what we're doing in the Philippines right now, but we're looking at working with some of the local schools in the US to promote healthcare technology. And then also through our Discord channel, right? So there's 300 million, generally speaking, younger folks that are up on Discord, which has historically been known for the the gaming and crypto communities. And through our Discord group, our goal is to get more of the younger folks interested in healthcare technology. So again, our mailing list and our link tree, you can find it at BOSHUG.com. And remember, we're looking for speakers. So please click on the link for speakers if you think you have something interesting to share. The topics, you only have to present for 20 to 30 minutes. We keep our meetings to 30 minutes or less. So it's not that much of a commitment, and the presentations can be done virtually. Also, do note though, we do plan on having in-person meetings soon. So, as things are slowly, getting to a safe space, if you will, we absolutely plan on having hosted local in-person meetings that will be shared and broadcasted through our the channels that we're using now, right, to reach our global audience. But for now, and speakers can be virtual regardless. And so, that there's a very low commitment there. And also just note the link to our Discord server. Okay, great. So today's topic is intelligent intranet and the Microsoft Cloud for Healthcare. So, a lot of the topic today is focused on what Microsoft has to offer in the industry cloud space, right? And whenever I hear the term Microsoft Cloud for Healthcare, I automatically start to think about industry cloud, and I'll explain that in a moment. So just a little bit about us. So we're one of the primary sponsors of the Boston Healthcare User Group. And so, we, as I mentioned, we're philanthropic leaders. We try to do as much as we can in our community, international speakers and teachers, founders of the group. We consider ourselves to be global community builders. And we're a team of consultants providing services in healthcare technology. And we also have a SaaS platform that assists in tracking clinical FTE and RVU and essentially helping the finance department on the operations side of large hospitals and hospital systems. So that's what we do commercially. And again, we're the sponsor of one of the sponsors of the Boston Healthcare Technology User Group. So today, I thought what we would talk about in the context of healthcare technology is this Power Platform and Microsoft Cloud for Healthcare offering that Microsoft has. I'd like to just, and part of that will be looking at some use cases for the Cloud for Healthcare, and then and also reviewing the architecture and how it sort of umbrellas multiple platforms at Microsoft. And then, hopefully all goes well, and we'll actually be able to pull up our demo environment and actually show you some of this stuff as well. If for some reason that doesn't work, we'll record that demo and make sure that the links are available for folks. It's a great demo, actually. We go through the different, not only the care plan components and the patient pieces of the Cloud for Healthcare, but the integration with Power Apps Portal and Azure services, specifically the Azure Healthcare Bot. As a matter of fact, let me just see if that is still, okay, it's still spinning up. I just want to make sure I don't miss a prompt or something where that might be useful. Okay. Okay, so again, I'll keep checking back on that. Okay, so again, so Cloud for Healthcare and platforms. So when I think of Microsoft Cloud for Healthcare, I think of industry cloud, right? I think one of the things that we want to acknowledge up front is that this concept of industry cloud and consolidating these sort of ERP platforms with our electronic patient record is not something that's specific to Microsoft, right? So what I mean by this is that there have been some pretty big announcements made recently. If we look at, for example, Cerner and their announcement with Salesforce, right? And marrying the customer components and the CRM-ish components of Salesforce with Cerner. If you look at Oracle and NetSuite and them tying together their offerings in the healthcare space as well. And then SAP doing the same thing, right, with their ERP stack, taking that and customizing that for industry cloud. So when I say industry cloud, it's also worth noting that we have industry cloud for automotive, we have industry cloud for finance, we have it for manufacturing, in all of the major industry. And the idea being is that that a lot of the underlying platformish stuff we all need, regardless of what industry we're in, right? And it's that top level that you're seeing in the cloud here that we can customize specifically for the specific industry. In this case, obviously it's healthcare, and that is essentially that's how I would define industry cloud, right? It's that customized offering of the platform, and even more specifically, that 20% at the top that's customized specifically for healthcare. And then underneath that, it's built on top of things like Azure Power Platform, GitHub for source control. A large part of this runs on Dynamics 365 and Microsoft 365. And now even LinkedIn is tied in. This can be useful for talent searches, right? As we're looking to optimize our workforce in healthcare. And so it's interesting because if we acknowledge that a lot of this is built on Dynamics 365, which is Microsoft's, I like to think of it as sort of I still call it, I'm a little bit older, so I still sort of refer to it as their ERP platform. I think that sort of works for today's conversation, right? That we could compare Dynamics 365 to Oracle NetSuite. We could compare it to, SAP, for example, in the industry space. And so what's interesting is that, like any other ERP system, Dynamics is built, it's made up of, entities, and it manages the data and access to records, et cetera. And so it's just a great example of, that functionality would be needed regardless of industry, right? But we can customize this and start to make use of these industry-specific features for cloud for healthcare. And of course, as you see down at the bottom, all this is wrapped around your identity management and security, right? And all vendors have an answer for that. Obviously, with Microsoft, that's Azure Active Directory and our Active Directory accounts. Right? So then, so if we dive into this a little bit deeper, so that gives us sort of a high-level overview of the platforms that make up the cloud for healthcare. And now if we dive in and we start to look at actually specific features, right? So if we look across the top, for example, you can see we've got, PHI, right? We want to make sure that we have the ability, obviously to protect patient data and meet any regulations, HIPAA regulations, security, compliance concerns, et cetera. And so notice that spans sort of all category on the left, right? And then as we continue to go over to the right, you can see the three different categories centered around enhancing patient engagement. And so when I think of, patient engagement, I think of patient access, right? And what we need to do just to make sure that we can get as many patients timely access to the healthcare that they need. And so it would make sense that when you start to look at things like patient engagement in the context of cloud for healthcare, and then when we start to look at specific technology features, it would make sense that things like the Azure Health Bot, for example, and the patient portal built on the Dynamics or Power Apps portal would be a good fit here, right? And so what I mean by that is, if our concern is providing patient access, one great way to do that is to give patients their own portal where they can log into the portal. As a matter of fact, I think I have a screenshot of that on the next screen. Yeah. So this is actually the Power Apps portal, or the Dynamics 365 portal that I was actually hoping to demo today. And we still might. We'll see what happens in the background as we're talking here. But if we're looking at that, the category in the upper right around patient access and the patient experience, then it would make sense that we would want to provide some sort of customized portal where, they could log into the portal and then schedule appointments for care, view any outstanding messages, find a doctor, right? And these use cases are very common, right? So we often get tasked with integrating and extending, for example, the Epic portal, right? And perhaps many of you might be familiar with the Epic patient portal. The Epic patient portal, as it stands now, last I checked, I believe 52% of the patients in the US are serviced through Epic Systems electronic medical record. So any institution that would be using the Epic portal, would be, you might have similar use cases, and you might see this in your Epic portal. And so a great example. So, at home, my doctor, we use the Epic portal for our healthcare system. And if I go in there, I have the same exact use cases, right? And in Epic, I can see my messages, my appointments, medical records, personal information. I can schedule an appointment, etc. I think where this starts to get a little bit interesting on the Microsoft side is the ability to integrate with Azure services. Specifically, now I'm talking about on the lower right-hand corner. There are two things going on with this Let's Chat button. And again, I'm hoping I can actually demo this for you here shortly. But if you actually click on that Let's Chat, what happens is, let me see if I actually have a slide. It will actually, I don't have a slide of the omni-channel screen. But essentially what will happen is when you click on chat, it actually opens up an omni-channel session using Azure omni-channel services. And so if you can imagine, in your hospital or your healthcare system, of course, you're going to have your sort of triage call center, if you will. And so, using omni-channel, one of the things we've seen a huge growth in over the past 2 years is not only giving patients and customers the ability to use voice, but to use things like SMS or chat from a website, right? And so what that would involve is you'd have to actually start the chat, and then on the back end, you have an interface where an agent gets notified, hey, there's somebody chatting right now, right? We need some interaction here. But what's interesting about this omni-channel integration is that at a certain point, the chat will make a decision to triage you, right, and into that live person. So I guess what I'm getting at here is when I click on that chat button, it's actually not going to start a session right away with agent in the background. What's going to happen is the Azure Healthcare Bot is going to collect some information up front. And so we'll ask, what are your symptoms? And you'll go ahead and you'll answer it. And the machine learning behind the scenes will triage. And then what will happen is you'll enter in your personal information, your name and date of birth, et cetera. And that's really important because what happens is when you're finished with the Azure Healthcare Bot part of the interaction, it will then route you to an agent using the omni-channel services so that the agent can pick up and continue to triage, as required. And so it's just, it's a wonderful example of, again, this patient access piece, right? And the personalized care. Like, how can we streamline that for patients? And so the most, I think the best example of that are the services that are available through the patient portal. Now, there is a part of the portal, you don't see it in that screenshot, but what you can do is you can essentially start a virtual visit right away using the Azure Healthcare Bot as well. So it will triage, and then if it determines you need a visit right away, what it will do is it will prompt you, do you want to schedule a visit, or would you like to, try to launch a virtual visit now, right? And actually it's worth noting that even if you schedule the visit, it can still be a virtual visit. Now, anything that services the virtual visit or the telehealth on the Microsoft side is going to be surfaced up through Microsoft Teams. And so this is where you can see, if we are looking at the underlying technology and the architecture of this, anything related to the healthcare bot is going to fall under the Azure stuff. Anything related to Teams will fall under Microsoft 365. And the portal itself will, technically falls under Dynamics 365. You might submit Power Platform, and that technically these portals have been rebranded as Power Apps portals as well. So Dynamics portals, Power Apps portals, underneath the scenes, the functionality is essentially the same. And so with that, I'm going to, let me just take a break from these slides real quick again. I just want to check on it says it was unable to load. So let me just give it one last college try, if you will. We'll see what happens here. Okay. Great. Okay, so then as we go over to the right and we continue to look at use cases, then what we can cross into is more the care coordination, care management, case management, and the care team collaboration. And so this is centered around Dynamics as well. This is actually a screenshot of the care management screen that I am trying my best to demo for you folks this afternoon. But you can actually, it's a great I guess it's a great screenshot, that might serve us, given that we don't have the demo right now. And that, on the left, you can actually see the different parts of the cloud for healthcare care management component, right? Now, one of the things you'll want to note is that it's a pretty big platform. All of the screens that you're looking at here in this screenshot effectively are where you would, literally deal with stuff that's specific to the care plan itself and activities, goals, et cetera, the patient type information. But there are other parts of the platform that are used to track ongoing cases, if you will. And I guess what I'm trying to get at is that stuff is built on top of the customer service components of Dynamics 365, which makes sense because underneath there's an entire, a ton of infrastructure that supports managing cases, right? And again, if we think about industry cloud, I would submit that 80% of the stuff you need to do to manage cases, whether they're healthcare cases or, tracking, support cases for the financial industry, et cetera, a large part of that's going to be the same, right? You're going to need to track the contact information. You're going to be able to have omni-channel on call, et cetera. It's that 20% that we need to have customized to be to specifically fit tracking cases in healthcare and making use of the underlying entities and dynamics that have to do with the cloud for healthcare. And so those obviously you would have underlying and entities. I might use the word tables, right? You can think of them as tables. So underneath we're going to have tables that support storing patients, the care plan information, the case information, and et cetera, right? So let me go backwards. So this is, again, care coordination. Now, remote patient monitoring makes use of the healthcare APIs, and this is where we start to tie in the case management as well, going beyond care management and case management. And then if we come over to the third category, improving clinical and operational insights, as you all know, as we build platforms like this, especially at the enterprise level, one of the most important things are the analytics and machine learning and the capabilities there. And so you can see, the interoperability would be serviced through the Azure Healthcare APIs. Some interesting information, technical information about the Azure Healthcare APIs is that, essentially this is FHIR underneath. What Microsoft has a pattern of doing is taking something like FHIR and then offering that capability in Azure. Usually it starts as a VM. And this is actually how it happened with FHIR services. At first there was a VM, it had FHIR services installed. You could spin up this VM in Azure, and then you could start to make use of the FHIR standard. And as you know, that's a standard, right? There's really no cost associated with that other than the cost of spinning up the virtual machine, installing the, components required to implement FHIR services, right? There's some Node.js stuff and some other components. And then they sort of evolve from there, right? And so that then the next step is usually that they try to turn it into a service in Azure, right? So what they try to do is abstract it so that to make it, in all fairness, what they're trying to do is make it as easy to use. And the easier they make it to use and the more they extend it, the more they charge money for it, if you will, right? So if you really wanted to do FHIR cheap on Azure, you could spin up a VM, put FHIR services in it, and you're good to go. If you wanted to make it even a little bit easier and rely on the team at Microsoft a little bit more, then you can start to look at the Azure FHIR service. And the Azure FHIR service is just that. It's an Azure service where they manage the FHIR components, and you're literally just making API calls into that service. Okay, so they've abstracted it. They're managing a bigger component of it. Now, the Azure Healthcare APIs takes that a step further, and it actually builds on top of Azure FHIR services. Not only is it turned into a service at this point, the third step here, the Azure Healthcare APIs, but they start to extend it, right? And by the way, Amazon and Google do the same thing. They just call it slightly different stuff. But like, for example, one of the things that, and I think this is Microsoft, it might be Google, but one of the ways that you might extend fire services is to offer some de-identification services, for example. And this would help with the PHI stuff over here, right? Protect health information. And so what Microsoft starts to do is they add additional functionality on top of fire services. And that is being served up as a service as well, right? So that's platform as a service, PaaS, right? So they're essentially managing this this PaaS service, if you will. And so the idea is that it saves you time and money and effort and staff, right? Your highly paid staff. And so that's how that works. So keep in mind, all three of those things exist today in Azure. Again, you can create a VM and you can put fire services in it and have the maximum amount of control and the cheapest cost. Or you can do that middle level, which is where you have Azure Fire Services and you're paying for that PaaS service. And then you can get sort of the next evolution, which is fire services with the additional APIs that you need to do other stuff in the platform as well. Okay, so all three of those things exist for us today. And with that said, let me do another check here. So this is still spinning up, and that's okay. It looks like we might end up recording this demo. We're coming down to the last 5 minutes here anyway, so that's fine. It's still been a really great chat and topic and presentation. So I'll talk for a few more minutes, and then what we'll do is just make sure that you have access to that the large components here, the use cases and the platforms that they're built on. It is worth noting there are some other important pieces of technology here. If you haven't looked into Synapse, it might be worth doing so. You can sort of think of Synapse as one-stop shopping for database and data warehousing and analytics. Essentially, Synapse bundles everything that used to be called analytics services and SQL Server, and then it adds on top of it machine learning capabilities, as well as pipelines through Azure Data Factory. So this is just data, and data connectors here. I'm sure this is separate per line of business. I'm not actually quite sure. This is a Microsoft slide, and Synapse itself uses ADF and has a ton of data connectors. This might actually be referring to other third-party connectors like to Epic, et cetera, is what I'm guessing is why they call this out separately. And then we've already talked about the healthcare APIs. And so all of this is built around Azure and provides the core healthcare data and solutions. And I hope that you were able to follow that because I think that serves really well as like, a 20-minute sort of dive into the architecture of the cloud for healthcare and being able to see some screenshots, right? And what we'll do is, again, we'll match this with a video where we'll demo this stuff. And then, what you can do is, of course, this will be recorded on YouTube as well. So if you're watching this video on YouTube, you should find a second video in the channel that actually has the demo for the cloud for healthcare. So please look for that if you're watching this at a later date on YouTube. As we're wrapping up, I would like to mention that Teams is a big part of this as well, right? So if we look at anything that has to do with scheduling, for example, what you're looking at here is actually the ability to manage shifts inside of Teams and seeing who's on call, who's available. And then if people are available, you have the ability to, obviously start video chats and collaborate live time. Notice that also this will be used for our virtual visits, right? For anything telehealth related, we have Microsoft Teams. Although Cloud for Healthcare, you can tie into other telehealth services as well. However, we have Teams here, and you can do your telehealth stuff here. So track shifts, tasks, approvals. One thing that's worth noting down here at the bottom is this Viva Insights and Viva Learning. This is really the tie-in to the intelligent intranet. So intelligent intranet from Microsoft is essentially using the capabilities of machine learning pointed at your collaboration data, your data that's stored in Teams, that's stored in SharePoint, that's stored in your line of business applications, that's stored in your email, and then surfacing that up through insights and really just optimizing our work streams, right? Including providing learning capabilities. And so you see Viva Learning at the bottom, right? And it really is this Viva Insights and this Viva Learning and teams that's providing the intelligent internet capabilities that get married with the cloud for healthcare and provide this encompassing experience, right? And this is exactly why I titled this presentation Cloud for Healthcare and intelligent intranet, because you'll hear this is a new buzzword at Microsoft this year. So you're going to hear a lot more about intelligent intranet. Now, hopefully you have a sense of what that means, at least, and how that gets tied into the cloud for healthcare. And so with that said, thanks for looking at these use cases. Again, what I'm going to do is go ahead and record a demo. And what we'll do in our demo is we'll actually walk through some of these new use cases. We'll walk through the care team collaboration components. We'll walk through the patient insights, the virtual health visit that starts at the portal with the Azure Healthcare bot and makes use of omni-channel that gets passed off to the triage folks in the background. We'll also show you some care team collaboration with teams and show you where clinical analytics happen and talk about interoperability as well. So this slide summarizes the demo that you have to look forward to. And again, if you're watching this on YouTube, look for that demo and a separate video recording in the same channel. If you're interested in learning more about the cloud for healthcare, there is a Microsoft Learn site. So if you Google Microsoft Learn and Cloud for Healthcare, there are very specific tracks for learning about the cloud for healthcare as it relates to the various platforms that we discussed today. Thank you. Have a wonderful afternoon, and thank you for attending our presentation.